Hello, everybody. I'm back again. It is Monday, and I'm here with two more chapters from my dad's manuscript. This one is The Sword and the Rose, and it's about a baron who is given a. Sorry, it's about a man who is given a barony for having saved the king's life, and how and what he has to do in order to win over their favor. So I'm currently on chapter 8 and 9. If you missed, feel free to go back into past broadcasts and you'll be able to watch from the beginning so you can get a little idea of the story. Um, yeah. So I'm just trying to think here. When last we left off, they had just battled at Gwilla's Hole, and Saltern was well, he wasn't doing so well. And then they're getting ready for the midsummer feast. Um, what else? Oh yeah, and the Baron of Wardick um, tries to negotiate peace with Gwalsor, but his terms were weren't able to be met, and Gwalsor didn't feel there's enough compromise, so they did not. The peace treaty was not signed, and here we go. Because yeah, anyway. So now, without further ado, chapter 8. Midsummer feast was approaching rapidly. Grandal barony prepared for the feast, for the state of affairs within the allowing for the state of affairs within the barony. We daren't be too. Yep. Nope. 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 Mm-mm. We daren't be too sparse. I, that's the word I'm believing for. I do not like the current word. It would say that we're still suffering from the effects of the rebellion. If word of it should get to the wrong quarters, he jerked his head eastward in the direction of the Wardick barony. Some people might be encouraged to do rash things. Ralno frowned. Will not be as bad if we spend so much on the celebrations that we have nothing left to fight the fight we know is coming? Well, Sir shrugged. We have two poor choices, so we throw the dice to decide which is better of the two. I've chosen the celebration. It has the added benefit of raising the spirits of the people. Ralno gave a brief smile. True enough, Lord Baron. They were interrupted by Jadal at the door. My Lord Baron, Lord Knight Marquian Darharelevant and his party have arrived. Thank you, Jadal. Tell them I shall be there directly. The boy dashed off and Gwalsor rose. I shall have to greet them, of course. A knight of his standing will expect no less, and my presence already offends him, without adding to it by discourtesy. Ralno also rose. I will set out some plans for mid. Ralno also rose. I will set out some plans for the midsummer feast, and bring them to you for your approval. Thank you. There we go. Did I mention I was going to have to do some? I needed to make some notes. Marquiandar Irrelevant put on a smile when he saw the Baron, though Gwalsor knew that the smile was only politeness. On the other hand, the man was making the attempt to be polite, which deserves some measure of politeness in return. Welcome to Grandel Castle, Lord Knight. Thank you, my Lord Baron. Let me present you my sister, Haywin Marharelevant. You will pardon me if I continue to hold my horse. Northwind can be a bit wild at times. We have come in response to your gracious invitation to the summer feast. This last again, this was the last, sorry, this last was again politeness. While sorry, oh my goodness, pronunciation, it's our friend. This last again was politeness, Gwalsar knew, for Darla Irrelevant had pressed for the invitation. He turned toward the woman. You are welcome here as well, Lady Haywin. She was dark and attractive, and she smiled at him as she said, Lord Baron, Morrow told me about your brave deed, but told me little else about you. I'm very pleased to meet you at last. Walser smiled at her in turn, and as he bowed to her, but he was thinking, Marquian told you of my brave deed? Not in such words, if I know this man at all. Aloud he said, Not so brave as all that, lady. I merely held up my shield and caught a crossbow quarrel meant for my king. I'd fought raiders and bandits a time or two on my father's lands, but that day with the king has been my only real battle. You're much too modest, my lord baron. Her brother was looking at her dourly, probably annoyed that his sister was making so much of the hated baron. Gwalsor said, A little modest perhaps, but also impolite, keeping my guest standing out here in the courtyard. Shall we go inside? I shall give orders at once for water to be brought to your quarters, so that you may refresh yourselves from your journey. And when you are ready, you can come have a glass of wine with me. As he stepped aside to let them follow the servants, he continued speaking. I may put aside my modesty to claim that this barony produces a very good wine, though of course they had been producing it long before I arrived. As they moved inside, Malgathop slipped up to Gwalsor's side. Moxaya, Lord, he said quietly. She eat you alive, you get too close. Gwalsor smiled. Ah, but I'm so brave, Malga. I can't let that scare me. Malgathop grinned and nodded. Just so, Lord. But Haywin appeared to have adjusted her tactics and no longer flattered Gwalsor quite so openly. She did, however, manage to make it clear that she was interested in him, something which annoyed her brother greatly, though he did his best not to let it become obvious. They made up a hunting party the next day, and Haywin paid attention to Gwalsor, though she also flirted a bit with one or two of the other unmarried knights in the group. Gwalsor, Gwalsor had a feeling that she was still concentrating on him, but was trying to make up for the initial slip of flattering him too much. He wondered to just what degree Marquian was pushing her on, and why. Simply for what advantage might accrue him from being related to the Baron? Even so, he looked askance at her when she tried to play up to Gwalsor, which was strange if he was encouraging her. But then, people could and did do all sorts of contradictory things. When they returned to the castle, a servant was waiting for them. My lord Baron, the chief steward asks a moment of your time. Of course. See to the comfort of our guest, Jadal. Stable my horse. Yes, my lord Baron. Gwalsor found Ralno with a piece of parchment in his hand. What news, Ralno? Good news, my lord Baron. Though a trifle obscure, Ralno held up the piece of parchment in his hand. A message from the king saying he is sending us something to make our midsummer feast a little more glad. And what is he sending? And that is where the obscurity comes in, my lord. He doesn't say what he is sending. Possibly a small purse of money? Perhaps we ought to consider sending invitations to some of the village headmen, particularly to those who join us to celebrate the midsummer feast, and make sure that they know it's by the king's grace that we celebrate so fully. Ronald smiled. You feel the word will be passed so widely, my lord? If I have any knowledge of villages at all, the word will pass as though it had wings. How many more can we invite? Ralno frowned in concentration. Much depends on what it is we assume the king is sending. We might be very badly out if we go on the assumption that he is sending money, and we put ourselves out 100 golds, only to find that he is sending us a very large fruit cake from the king's kitchen. Fruit cake would be for winter, not midsummer, objected Gualsor. Ralno waved a hand at the objection. Just an example. You understand what I mean. Yes, I do. But it's also too good a chance to give some of our foes a bit to think about. Suppose we consider it this way. The king is likely to send something for the feast. Whatever he sends, that will be so much less that we might have to spend. So if we spend some of that and to see to it that the people know who it is to thank, all the better. And you are asking me to make a guess as to what the king might be sending? Balsar nodded. I'm afraid so, he smiled wryly. In a sense, I know the king very well, and in another sense, I hardly know him at all. Ralno frowned again. I'll do my best, Lord. Thank you for your time. As Gwelsor went, he wondered what the king could be sending. Despite what he had told Ralno, he expected something substantial. His difficulty was in thinking about the king at all. Thinking about the king brought back all those memories, along with a few fancies of his own. How bad was his fear of crossbows? He had hoped to get over it in time, but the events of the spring had made him wonder. Charging that assassin had been irrational, however much he tried to brush it off, and he had wanted to flee Aguila's hole. The only thing preventing that was that there'd been nowhere to flee, with his men lined up behind him. He shook his head. Go on, my Lord Baron, brood over it. That ought to improve things greatly. If Gwelsor had any thought of escaping from his duties, the first sight of Foraith standing outside Ralno's quarters put that to flight. What now, Marshal? Someone has absconded with the castle store of practice swords? No, my lord, but father's boots and shirt sleeves. To think some of our new men are handling, to see some of our new men handling the things, you might think it wise. That bad? My lord, do you know who we have serving us as men at arms? Without waiting for an answer, the marshal went on. First, there are some young men off the farms who have no hope of inheriting land and no other means of making a living. Also, we have those who have turned to arms, being unable to find work in their own trade. Then there are those who trade in his arms, who have wandered to Grandel Barony after having been cut adrift by their former masters. And are they that bad? They're that bad? Those in the third group? No. But the other groups? He shook his head. Completely untrainable? Well, not completely. Sorry. Well, Forsyth ran a hand down his chin. Not completely. But I fear we won't have the time to get them ready before we have to go to battle. Gwelsor nodded, his lips tightening. That is a difficulty. Perhaps not impossible, though. Ralno has just given me some hopeful news. He outlined the message from the king, and Forsyth nodded. It should help. At least it might give some people cause to think that the king has not forgotten you. I wish I knew just what he's sending you. We'd be better able to take advantage of it. Exactly how Ralno and I feel at the moment. At the moment, though, we can see to it that the rumor goes around. Yes, that will do, for sure. Their attention was suddenly taken by a clattering on the stairs. A white-faced page dashed up. My Lord Baron, my Lord Baron! He suddenly recalled himself and bowed quickly. My Lord Baron, there's been an accident. Jadel's hurt. Where is he? Down in the stable yard, Lord Baron. Lead me to him. As they went, Gwalstar asked, has a healer been summoned? Yes, Lord, but it was thought that you'd wish to know as well. And indeed I do. Did you see what happened? No, Lord, but they say no is no. Best I hear it from those who actually saw it. But stand ready later on to tell me what they were saying, just in case someone's memory was faulty or someone tries to shift blame. They did not speak again as they went down to the stable yard. The stable yard smelt partly of clean hay and partly of horse manure. There was a crowd gathered round something on the someone on. There was a crowd. The there was a crowd gathered around someone on the ground. They went into the crowd, which melted away before the Baron. Some even disappeared into the barns altogether, and Gwalser wondered if any of those had actually been involved in the accident. It didn't matter, of course. They could be tracked down if necessary. They came to the center, where a middle-aged man in a gray robe, tied with the blue cord of a healer, was kneeling over Jadal, who was lying white-faced on the ground. Four others, two pages and two grooms, knelt there as well, concern on their faces. Two pages wore Dar Haralevant's family colors, as did one of the grooms. The other groom wore more familiar colors, but at the moment, Gwalser could not quite recall which of his knights they belonged to. He first felt shame that he was worrying about colors when Jadal was hurt. He went down on one knee. He wanted to question the healer, but restrained himself. The man was running some kind of pale, translucent stone over the boy's body, and interrupting him would not be a good notion. Gwalsor concentrated on the stone. He'd heard of those stones of ascertainment, used mainly as this one was being used to determine where an injury or illness was seated. It was not everyone, not even every healer, who could use a stone, and some priests frowned on their use as coming too close to divining in nature. As divining the future. Walser could see that they might be invaluable in dealing with an unconscious man, finding where his injuries were before moving him. As the stone moved over the boy's right side, it turned pink, then bright red, then pink as it moved on. The healer muttered something faintly, then moved the stone back to where it turned the reddest. He held it there for a time, muttered something else, then went on. Finally he stood, dusted off his knees, and tucked the stone away in a pocket. He was surprisingly young, within a year or two of Gwalsar's own age, with sandy hair and a friendly freckled face. He looked at the Baron. Your page has suffered no more than a broken rib. He will have to be kept still for a while, and he will feel the pain for some time. I will bind up his ribs and provide a draught for the pain. He looked down at the boy. Stay here and don't try to move. I will be back immediately with bandages and something for your pain. My thanks, said Gwalsor. I will see that you are rewarded. The healer snorted. Reward me by not allowing your page to injure himself again. With your leave, my lord. And without waiting to see whether or not that leave was granted, he turned and strode away. Gwalsor looked up, noticed Melgoth out of the corner of his eye, and said, I suppose I ought to have him hung for disrespect, eh, Melga? There was a chuckle. No, Lord. It's serious bad to offend healers, special when you know you have to fight battles so soon. But Gloucester's attention was caught by something else. One moment, you four. The two grooms and two pages, finding themselves suddenly the only persons on the scene to whom blame might be attached, and having heard that Jadal's injuries were not fatal, were backing away toward the barn. They halted, and fear was apparent on their faces. He heard running footsteps behind and turned just in time to see Brennan rushing up, eyes only for Jadal. She flung herself to her knees, reaching for the boy. Wellstar stopped her by her shoulders. "Wait, lady, the boy has a broken rib. You may injure him." She was suddenly up on her feet, glaring at him. "Injure him? Injure him? It is not because of me that he lies here, is it? You said no harm would come to him. Does he look unharmed?" Wellstar took a hold of himself. She was upset, and to top it off, the one person he had not thought to inform was Jadal's mother. Jadal's mother. "Lady, as I recall, I promised that no harm would come to him at my hands. When you arrived, I was just about to ask how he had been injured, as I was not here myself. If you would wait a moment." He turned back to the four. "Now, what happened here?" The four looked at each other. Then one of the grooms spoke up. "Lord, we meant no harm. We was racing two of Marquis's horses. Your page, he come up into the yard just as they been be rounding the corner, and they it. The horse you were leading, it pulled one way, his own pulled t'other, and he fell. We meant no harm, Lord. Not not to him nor any." Gloucester nodded. He understood quite well. As long as there were grooms and pages, there would be hijinks, and only through bad luck would they come to the attention of the higher-ups. "What of the horses?" "The horses be all well, Lord Baron, save for a bump or bruise here or there. But they be sound, no damage to the legs, nor aught serious." "And where are they?" "They all be put away, Lord Baron." Gloucester nodded. "Remove all evidence, as much as possible. Which two horses of Lord McKeon's had been racing? Likely there would be 4 different stories on that. If Lord McKeon and the party required the use of 2 particular horses and found them uninjured, would anything be discovered in the normal course of things?" "My horses?" "Put away and brushed down, Lord Baron." "I see. Well, we will wait here for the healer to return, and once Jadal is seen to, you 4 will lead me to my horses. If I am satisfied that they have come to no harm, then all is well. Unless, of course, Lord Markian should complain to me of injuries suffered by his animals in my stables." "No!" Brennan spoke from behind him. Walter turned to Brennan. "What would you have, lady? Hanging?" "No, but at least a whipping." "I could order that, of course, but courtesy demands that I request the masters of these to order whatever punishment they require. And as their masters are all guests under my roof, it is at least a little improper to have their servants whipped." Wow. Okay, I'm rereading this, and yeah, yeah, this is historical and a little too historical for my liking. I don't know. I have to figure this out because either I go historical, I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. This is me going back and forth between being historically accurate and recognizing that this is a fantasy story. She stood quiet then. He knew that she was a woman raised and trained to deal with the oversight of a whole household, servants and all. She would know the proprieties as well as he, but when it came to her son, she might wish to break all manner of rules. Only a short while later, the young healer came back, carrying a woolen bag. His glance around the small group showed little regard for any. "Will you need our help?" asked Walsor. "If the Lady Brennan will be willing to help, yes. Then the rest of you may go where you will." Even as he spoke, he was turning back to his patient. "Shall we go to see the horses then?" They went to the stalls where both Gloucester's horse and Jadal's were kept. Welsser satisfied himself that both animals were well, then turned to the servants. So, I leave it to you to satisfy Lord Mercian regarding any damage his horses may have taken. But be well aware that I remember you all, and if Lord Marquian comes to me complaining of injuries suffered by his horses in my stables, you'll be sought out and found. Now, go on and be careful of the sort of nonsense you get up to in the future. With a jungle with a jumble of yes, my Lord Baron, and no, my Lord Baron, and thank you, my Lord Baron, they left with as much speed as was compatible with good manners. Welsser smiled. I ought to have hung those rascals, Malka? Little Feta answered the Baron's smile with one of his own. Only if Marquian's horses be injured. 2 days later, a train of 4 large wagons, accompanied by men at arms, 10 men at arms under the king's pennant, came into the castle courtyard. The commander of the men at arms asked the castle guard to inform Gwalsor and ask him to come to the courtyard, since the king had ordered them to deliver the contents of these wagons to him personally. A page found Gwalsor at the smithy, making inquiries as to the abilities of Grandel Barony to arm its troops. The Baron completed his questions and walked to the courtyard. Seems king not forget you, then. Malka had been accompanying him all morning. It would seem so, said Gwalsor, and apparently his gratitude takes a generous form. After the usual greetings were finished, the chief of the king's party spoke. The king bids tell me The king bids me tell you this. There are some services which cannot be paid for by money or property. However, I will present you these. Make your midsummer feast a little more cheery. In these wagons are 6 hogsheads of the king's best ale and 6 fat hogs. I also send a pouch containing 56 silver pennies, for without your action, I should not have seen my 56th year. All this is very welcome, Captain. Will you rest here at Grendel Castle for a night or two before you begin your return journey? Thank you, my Lord Baron. My men and I will be glad of your hospitality. Later that evening, Welsser called Foraith, Ralno, and a few others together. We shall have a happy midsummer feast for certain, but it may be even more happy for us if we can be sure that today's events are heard in the right quarters. I would like to invite several of the mayors of the larger towns and villages and have it announced that they are coming to enjoy the king's bounty. Further, we shall see to it that it is mentioned a time or two in the course of the feast. Now, who might we invite? We must be sure that the invitations arrive in time for the guests to be able to come in for the feast. Nice for the Baron, eh, Toss? King sends him half a dozen pigs and a lake o' beer. Be nice having some of that here. But Tostag was thinking deeply, watching the man go who had just brought them the message. Might be just a little bit more than that. More than that, man. Think about it one bit. What's to think about? The Baron's just got word from the king that the king hasn't the Baron's just got word from the king that the king hasn't just given him a bit of land and let him go. Anybody thinking of giving him trouble to the young Baron Lord Baron Gwalsor has got to be thinking about maybe the king will be coming in to sort things out. It be meaning, for instance, that Baron Wardick might not be so hot for pushing at Grandel's border. Understanding leapt to Manic's eyes. So there might be time for the Baron or his knights to come looking for us in this here swamp? Just so. And we know our friendly wizard has ways and means of warning us, but we might need something more. Sounds like you be having something in mind? I have. We'll build ourselves a fort here. A fort? Big stone walls and the like? Tostig snorted. Not that ambitious, man. Just a log palisade here, with our houses inside. You want to be having our lot here, building a fort? Remember the time you had getting them to even build shacks that they have? I remember. What I be figuring on doing is sending some of the lads out to a village or two, grab a few folk, and bring them back to do the building for us. Toss, just a bit ago you be saying that the lads ought to be keeping their forays down so as not to get the Baron and his folk cross with us. Tostek nodded. That be the thing about giving orders, man. You gotta know when to be changing them. This be the time. Manic nodded again. You've been right more times than I know you'd be wrong, Toss. Want me to go give the order? Tostig frowned. Maybe we ought to be talking to our wizard first. What's he got to do with it? Just politeness. We let him know what we be planning, just so he be knowing. You be want me to come along when you go see him? It'd be making me feel easier if you were. Manic grinned. You think two of us outnumbering that old stinker be like to help? If he were to be getting rifled with us, man, truthfully, I don't be liking you, me, and the rest of the lads outnumbering him would be the slightest. I don't be thinking you, me, and the rest of the lads outnumbering him would be the slightest help. I just be liking to have you along. Manic shrugged. So we go. The wooden man was outside Hange's shack, hauling water. Manic looked at it, frowning. That thing be giving me the creeps. Tell the truth, man. I don't be liking it much myself. But we be taking the help the wizard be giving us, and oughtn't to be complaining too much over things he be doing on his own. Slavlan Hanj met them at the door before they could even knock. And what can I do for you today, Tostig? We've made a decision, man and I, and we come to let you know what we've decided. The man's eyes widened a little. The man's eyes widened a little. Then Hanj smiled. Surely you're not going to throw these old bones out in the cold, are you? I'd wager you know just what we came to tell you, you old bastard. No, nothing like that at all. Just that news seems to say that the Baron might have time to be coming in after us. We'd be planning on building a fort in here. A fort? The wizard smiled. Are you going to make carpenters and builders out of your people then? Postic shook his head. Not likely. What we'd be planning is out to a few of the villages and hauling in a few locals to get them to do the work for us. I see. And why do you come to see me? Simple politeness. We'd not be wanting you to be noticing a lot of new people around here and be getting upset over it. Ah, I thank you for your concern for my delicate nerves. The wizard stepped back and closed the door. Thank me for my concern for your brains that I don't split your skull and spill them all over your door sill, Tostig thought. Okay. Chapter 9. Midsummer feast had come. The eternal struggle was going on between children and their with their eyes on the sweets being sold in various stalls, and mothers with their minds on nutrition and family finances. The day had started cool and mizzling, but by mid-morning the sun was shining, and the fair was going to be a success, barring an afternoon thunderstorm. Haywin Mar Irrelevant did her best to stay by Gloucester's side throughout everything. As the Baron, he was expected to be seen during the festivities. He was constantly followed by his Lafetta companion, who seemed to always be waiting for something to happen. Gloucester had allowed Jadal the day off. Most of the day would be spent walking and standing, and Jadal, though he tried, was not up to being on his feet for long. He doubted, though, that Jadal would spend the whole day resting in his quarters. He was a boy, after all, and it was midsummer feast. The people were somewhat stiff when the Baron came by, extremely polite and courteous so that no fault could be found, but by noon it was beginning to wear on him. Fourth, who made it his business both to mix with the crowd and to watch the Baron, saw the lines on his face beginning to deepen. There were quarterstaff bouts, single stick bouts, wrestling, dart throwing, archery, weight tossing, and many other contests. There were even small crossbow matches. The Baron made at least a short appearance at each, even the crossbow matches. Fourth watched Gloucester steel himself to watch these latter, and hoped that not too many others noted the tight grasp of the Baron's right hand on his leather sleeve covering his wrist. The marshal saw Malgathep step up and whisper in the Baron's ear, and young Gloucester relaxed almost visibly. Forth himself looked over the crowd and saw to see who might be watching. There was the Irrelevant girl, of course. She'd done everything but tie herself to the Baron's arm, and likely as not she would report all she saw to her brother. It don't matter who much saw. It don't matter much who saw in this crowd, he realized. It needs only someone gossiping in the wrong place about how the Baron looked at the crossbow bolts. He shook his head. Have someone set to looking at who might be more mindful of the Baron's welfare than most. Saldra's tears. Be I now having to pull every peasant who says an unguarded word and put him to the question? Always hated that when I seen it done. Now I be on the other side. What did you get yourself into now, Forith Hendolov? Evening came on, and the tables were set up for the feast. Orders of precedence separated Haywin Marharelevant from the Baron, but whatever she thought, she did not let it trouble her outwardly. Just before everyone sat down to eat, a herald announced that the generosity of the king had contributed to the feast in both meat and drink. Everyone ate and drank, though not too much, for the midsummer dance was still to come. After everyone had had something to eat and drink, The castle musicians came out and began to play the dance music softly. The herald rose and called out, "Choose the leader of the dance." By long-standing tradition, the common people always chose the leaders of the dance, a man and a woman. When the feast was being held at a baronial castle, it was practically unheard of for the people not to choose the baron. It was therefore no surprise to anyone that the herald listened, then said, "The people call the Lord Dar Randolph to lead the midsummer dance." If the baron were married, it was again most almost certain that his wife would be called for to partner him. In a case such as this, where the baron was unmarried, the people could and did call for whomever they wished. Often as not, they used this opportunity for a joke. After listening carefully, the herald said, "The people call the Lady Brennan Marpatvan." Brennan frowned, then composed her features and rose forth to stand beside Gwalsor. The baron took her hand, bowed, and said, "I count myself fortunate, lady. The people have their little jokes when they can. They know I don't care for you." But being on public display, she smiled as she spoke. "In that case, I count myself unfortunate." Sorry, I'm just writing down the sentence that I just butchered. Okay. Brennan hid her frown, kept her kept her feel kept her features composed, and rose, going forth to stand beside Gwalsor. There we go. "Ah, in that case, I count myself unfortunate." She snorted. "Such courtly words from a great hero." He blushed. "Lady, there are more times when one can act of heroism. There are times when that one act of heroism has cost me more than I care to think of. And I do not count that lump of flesh that once sat at the end of my wrist, either." But there was no time left for talking, as the music had begun to play louder and more insistently, and it was time for them to begin the dance. The festivities went on and on. The first dance, by tradition, was a long one, but when it ended, the Baron and Lady Brennan went back to their seats. Out of courtesy, Balthazar had to dance with most of the noble ladies present. It was very late when he made his way to his bed, escaping the blandishments of various ladies, including Haywen Mar Irrelevant. Haywen watched him go, a look of mild disappointment on her face. Only someone watching carefully would notice her right hand crushing the fabric of her dress, then letting go. As you can tell, there needs to be some more rewriting here. "Well, my Lord Baron," said Malgathep, as they walked back through the castle corridors. You need not go to cold and lonesome bed tonight, and lonesome bed tonight. I see at least four willing to give you warm and busy night. Oh yes, there are three sorts. The ones who wonder what it's like making love to a man with one hand, the ones who wonder what it's like making love to the Baron, and the ones who see themselves as future Lady Baroness. I think maybe you little hard to please, my lord, and I think I have to be just now. Think on it. Some dear young thing discovers I have no intention of making her my Lady Baroness, and suddenly I'm faced by angry brothers, fathers, uncles, cousins, or nephews by marriage, or perhaps all of them at once. White teeth flashed in the olive face. And maybe you little disappointed particular lady not offer herself? There was a barely perceptible catch in Guelsor's gait. Then he continued on. Perhaps the Baron's wild Lafetta is making up tales to amuse himself. Ah, there is someone? Maybe Baron's wild Lafetta misunderstand his lord's desires, kidnap her for him by mistake? No, leave her. A moment later, the Baron spoke more calmly. My apologies, Malga. Perhaps I'm a bit overtired tonight. Maybe wild Baron's wild Maybe Baron's wild Lafetta ought to know when not to bait master. And here we are, safe and sound at your chamber. Malgathep opened the door, stepped in, and sniffed. Still safe, my lord. You think someone might try to curse me again, Nolga? Enough possibilities, so I don't want to take chances. You want Paige sent up here to help you undress? Qualisor shook his head. Don't bother him. I can manage myself for tonight. Good night, Malka. Good night, my lord. For a moment there, for a moment, Malgathup stood looking at the closed door with an expressionless face. Then he turned and walked away. I don't know what that sentence is about. And it's why I have it marked in orange, and it's still marked in orange because I still have no idea what it means. Like it's just this sentence, and it sounds like there should be something more there. I don't know. The next day after a midsummer feast, most people slept in as far as their duties would allow. The Baron, though he was by no means the last one up, was not up and about at his usual hour. The afternoon found him discussing tools with Edic Da, in particular tools which could permit handicapped persons, differently abled people, to do tasks that normally required okay, how would I put it this way? Because this is, yeah, again, this was written back when that was an acceptable word. You have to reword that. In particular, tools which could permit people missing hands to do tasks which were normally required two hands. In the course of the discussion, they walked through the castle and even down into the town. All this was to the disgust of the Baron's guard, who would much have preferred to have been on horseback for such an excursion. Gualsor, deeply engrossed in what the gnome was saying, was not aware of the noise until he suddenly realized that Edicta had stopped talking. He looked over and saw that Edicta had a look of fear on his face. What is it? This sound, my lord Baron. It's the sound of a hunting mob. Well, they won't be hunting you at any rate. But who might they be hunting, lord? We'll see. He began to stride in the direction of the noise, followed by his guard, with disapproving looks on their faces. They could protect the Baron, but they could not protect They could protect him easier if he didn't walk around toward obvious trouble. They found the source of the noise very shortly. The young healer who had dealt with Jadal's injury was fleeing from a mob chasing him with sticks and stones. The mob was being urged by a priest in red robes, who shouted and waved them forward, pointing at the healer. The healer had taken several blows already, and a gash over one eye was bleeding fiercely. Gwalsor turned to his guards. "Stop this business!" The chief of the guard party directed two of the four by hand signals to deal with the mob. The priest paused, then turned to slip away down an alley. Gwalsor turned to the guards, pointing back at the priest, ordered, "Get that fellow!" I'm not sure which priest it is. There's two priests there. Wait, no, sorry. Uh, the healer. Confusion. Okay. He wished Malgo were with them. He probably would have had the priest under control already. But Malga had some other things to do this afternoon and couldn't be there. Again, it's orange and it's orange for a good reason, because what are the other things? And that should have been discussed earlier. That's bothering me a lot. My Lord Baron, it's risky to send off your guard. I believe it will be safe enough while one of you fetches that priest for me. Do it. The chief of the guard party looked at the Baron, then looked at the remaining guard and nodded. The man was off at a run. Walser stood by while the two guards dealt with the mob. It was possible that the mob scene was intended to create enough confusion for an attack on him, though he did not believe that. That would require having everything ready to be set in motion when the Baron walked into the town, which was something that could hardly be predicted. The mob was broken up easily enough without the priest urging them on. Most of the people ran off when they saw armed men wearing the Baron's colors. Even the ones who were too worked up to pay attention to the presence of the guards were brought to their senses by a rap or two with the butt of a halberd. Suddenly, there was a widening area of clear space centered around the healer. Two guards and three others moaning on the ground with broken heads. Gwalsor turned Gwalsor, to the relief of the chief of the guard party, walked over to the healer, who stood behind the other two guards, dabbing his head with the sleeve of his robe. The healer eyed the Baron as he approached. "My thanks for the rescue, my Lord Baron." Something in the tone of his voice suggested he disliked being beholden to the Baron. "Your name?" Salder Healer, my lord. By long tradition, healers left their names and families behind them when they became healers. "And how have you offended these people, Salder Healer?" "It was not so much these people, my Lord Baron, but that priest." "So what had he against you?" "I use a tone of ascertainment, my lord. The priest is one of those who will call that divination, and trespassing on the rights of the gods." Gwalsor nodded. "I thought as much. Do you know his name?" "No." Oh, sorry. Salder shook his head. "No. He's new to the town." "Ah, here he comes now." Gwalsor looked over to where the guardsman was escorting the priest, where his guardsman was escorting the priest back, holding a firm grip on his upper arm. The priest was a slender, harsh-featured man, but apparently not in the best physical condition. He was puffing, while the guard, even bearing weapons and wearing brigandine and helm, was only breathing a little hard. "I run him down, lord," the guard said with a smile. "And he be a fierce one, but he ain't been able to keep up a pace." "Well done." Gwalsor dug in his wallet and pulled out a silver coin and tossed it to the man, who left his halberd leaning on his shoulder, caught the coin, tucked it in his sash, then took up his halberd again, all without releasing the prisoner. Welser eyed the priest. Your name? The man lifted his chin. I am Veritor Han Orland, my lord Baron. And what was it you were about here, Veritor Han Orland? My lord Baron, we were punishing this fellow for taking the prerogative of the gods upon himself. The priest spoke with hardly a trace of common accent in his voice. I see. And just how is he supposed to have done so? He knew what the answer would be, but he had to hear it from the man's own lips. He uses one of those accursed stones, my lord Baron. It is a form of divination, of discovering those things which the gods have hidden. And yet, he uses a stone in the process of his healing work. Surely the gods do not object to such works of mercy? But the priest was not willing to give even a thumb length. My lord Baron, it is not for men to know all of the wishes and purposes of the gods. It is only for us to live our lives without attempting to be as the gods are. You argue in circles, fellow. We are not to attempt to know all the wishes and purposes of the gods, yet you claim to know at least one of them, that men ought not to use stones of ascertainment. But let us leave that aside. What justification do you have for causing a riot? My lord Baron, we need no justification from any to punish apostates. No, perhaps not. But you need great justification to harm people of this barony or to do damage to my property. Take him away and have him locked up for judgment. You have no right to judge me. I am the servant of the gods. And I am a servant of the king, responsible for keeping order in this part of his domain. Take him away. Two guards took an arm each and hustled the priest away. The chief of the guards looked at Gwalsor. The baron smiled. Yes, we will go back to the castle ourselves. We don't wish to risk my noble skin too badly, do we? He knew, though, that it was not his skin they worried about, but what would happen to them if he were harmed. A flogging was most likely. Hanging was not out of the question. He turned to the healer. Do you wish to accompany us to the castle, fellow? It might be safer. The healer shook his head. Without someone to stir them up and urge them on, the people are mostly harmless. Okay, so that is chapters 8 and 9. And as you can see, I kind of have to go back and forth between like historical accuracy, the balance between historical accuracy and fantasy. Like, I don't know. I mean, I kind of want to find like a balance between the two. So there's probably gonna be there's probably just gonna be whippings and beatings because that's just the way. Hmm. Um, yeah, I think I'm gonna use less ableist language though. That I think I can get away with because some of the stuff doesn't make sense. Like you need to describe it in a different way because they haven't created anything. Like he's basically talking about getting like a mechanical hand. Spoilers, looking at getting a hand that he can use so he can actually use two hands as his way of coping with the loss. Yeah, I just because don't have anything existing, you're going to use the description of like they if you're going to be historically accurate, they probably say he's some sort of demon or he's been horribly disfigured. They aren't going to say they aren't going to use terms like handicapped anyway. Um, and so there's that. This is me trying to navigate. This is me trying to navigate stuff, and I do want to think about that. I mean, like, I'm not going to use the term differently abled. He's missing a hand. He's missing a hand, and I think I'm gonna just sort of pull from my own experiences, um, of dealing with my own like disabilities, um, and what it's like to because he didn't always not have his hand. He started off with both hands and lost one along the way, and that's the same as me. Um, it's not exactly the same because there's like a physical. Well, this is still technically physical, but you can't really see it all the time. Obviously, hair down, you can't see it. So I kind of want to. I'm gonna probably just pull from that my own experiences in that way and how I would deal with it because I feel like while sore goes on, he doesn't define himself as a person who is missing a hand. He happens to be missing a hand and he wants to just sort of work his way through that. For some people, that becomes they become like the person with the one-handed person, and that becomes their whole entire identity and who they are. For me, I am hearing impaired, but I don't let that define me. It's something that I just happen to live with, and if I have instruments that I can use in order to continue on my life the way it is, then I'm going to use those. And not everybody wants to do that. Some people are just going to have other ways of how they navigate their ways of experiencing the world. and and I think he and I choose similar ways to navigate. So yeah, that's my speech on differently abled people. Yeah, but see things I do take into consideration based on the story that I'm given and where I want it to kind of go. There's also the whole heart. There's there's the feminist situation going on, but again, that's pardon me, how realistic do I want to like how historically accurate do I want to make it versus this is fantasy. So many decisions to make. I think I'm just going to tell the story as best I can and add in all the parts that I need to add in, and then work through yeah some of the stuff. Some of the stuff I'll be sensitive about, some of the stuff will not be as sensitive. And yeah, but I think I'm gonna have big sticking points on like abilities, ableism, and sexism. Those are gonna be the two ones. Because like I said, ugh, I have so many books to read. Wait, I just realized most of them have the name warrior women in them. Let's see. Warrior queens, warrior women warriors, and an idiot's guide to women's history. Just so I can kind of get a better idea on historical women figures. That's a whole nother matter. I'm going to be talking about that and ranting about that throughout this whole entire stream as well. Um, just because that's what brings me out in this story so much. Anyway, those are the two chapters for tonight. I'm going to pull back on my rants again. and probably work through what can I add to that. Although what I will say about these two chapters, they aren't all bad, but um, there's there's opportunities here for me to like add more to the story in these specific sections, because there's sections that I want to have more story about. So I'm going to be working on that tonight, because they are really, really like, my brain is just like firing off about what I can add to the story to make it better. So I'm really kind of, well, to like enrich it and, yeah, add to it, because some of it's just a little flat. Like there's this guy, there's the showing and not telling. Wait, telling and not showing, and I want to show more, which means it's going to be longer, and but it's going to be good because it's going to have more character development, more emotion, and I'm excited to do that. So I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to talk to you all tomorrow. Um, I'm going to see, like, there might be a time sometime this week where I may be a little bit later. I might have it a couple times this week. If there is, just bear with me. It might be running a little bit late depending on what's going on. I might do an emergency little like blip to you guys ahead of time, but we'll see. Okay. Um, but until tomorrow, I will talk to you all again later. Thanks again for tuning in. Bye.